Hi, everyone, and welcome to Freaked Out. I am Liz, a psychic medium with a passion. I really enjoy going behind the scenes, uncovering the truths that are often unseen. Today, we're going to be covering a story, a case that has captured the audience of many, good and bad. A story of resilience, deception, freedom, you name it. And we are talking about Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Now, recently, Gypsy actually dropped her book, and I believe it's almost like a 7-hour audio. That's how I've been listening. I wanted to go over a lot of the facts in the books and talk about things above and beyond, whether she missed it, you name it. But because it is quite a lengthy book, unfortunately, I didn't want to do this, but this is going to have to be a two-parter. I haven't even finished the entire book, almost done, but I covered a big chunk of it thus far. But as somebody who connects to energies beyond the surface, I'm here to explore everything in between the lines. What truth does this book reveal? What remains hidden? And most importantly, where Gypsy's life will lead. And join me as I give my psychic predictions on all of the above. And this is more than a story. It's a journey into a deeply complex situation. And I am honored to share my insight with you. Not everyone's going to agree with me, so just be aware of that. So grab your tea, because I'll be spilling mine. Also, make sure to press like on this video. We want everyone to see this. So in case you have been living under a rock, Gypsy Rose is an American convicted murderer. She was convicted of second-degree murder of her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard. And before anything went anywhere and we found out all the details, she was actually potentially up for death row. Her and her boyfriend, Nick, at the time. Now, she's somebody who has claimed to be a victim of lifelong physical, mental, and medical abuse. And she ended up getting sentenced for 10 years and ended up getting early parole as well. I have always been very drawn to this case since I heard about it. Now, I'm Canadian, so I don't hear about anything right away. But because it made it all the way to Canada, it fascinated me. I had been watching pretty extensively over the last 5-10 years about it. And then right before she got that parole, I just had this weird feeling. And I had talked to Landon and his family, and I was saying, hey guys, that Gypsy Rose girl is coming up for a parole hearing here very soon. So I'm thinking something's up with that. And I think she's going to get out early. And then 24 hours later, it was announced that this was in fact happening. And as soon as that happened, I set my date in my calendar and have been engaged in this case for quite some time. Now, she's had quite the busy year. She got married while in jail, and then once she got out, her and her husband broke up after, I believe, what to be 4 months. She got with her ex, the love of her life that she claimed, and then the two of them are now having a baby. She is currently living with her stepmother and father, and she's about to pop. I believe this baby's coming very soon. And I know she's having a girl, which I also predicted. We're going to talk about every single subject possible here, but we're going to go in order of how she went in her book. A lot of people have a lot of opinions about Gypsy Rose. And let's face it, they have used their platforms to bring her down and just come at her. And I don't know why anyone would dedicate their entire lives and platforms to just bringing this woman down. I mean, she did her time. The court said it was enough. It is what it is. I understand why people are angry with her. I get all of that, and we're going to talk about it. But I also just feel like it's equally as icky if here you are obsessing over someone so badly, you've made a complete platform just trying to bash them in every way possible. You can have your opinion, but being a bully, bad plus bad, doesn't equal good. I also want to mention she was failed by a lot of people, not even including her mother, her father, her stepmother, the doctors, social services, neighbors, you name it. Every single person failed her. I'm not thinking about older Gypsy right now. We're talking about young Gypsy. I really feel in my heart of hearts that Dee Dee was extremely manipulative and a lying woman. She just couldn't help herself. She came from her own trauma, and instead of fixing her issues, she put that shit on her daughter. I am surprised that Gypsy ended up as good as she has. I used to work in a group home setting, and I used to work with teenagers, and teenagers by themselves, without that extra trauma from their parents doing whatever to abandon them or get them to a place where they're in a group home, are crazy on their own. I can only imagine what it would be like to have a child in that situation. Kids, they react, and it took Gypsy a long time to react. Dee Dee was a con artist. She really was. I think her con started from a very young age and just carried through her entirety of life. Now, when I try to channel Dee Dee's energy, it's pretty dark and gross and slimy and twisty, but I decided that I will be making a channeling video of Dee Dee and talking about everything surrounding her. Gypsy had actually made a letter closer to the end of her book that she made in prison to help release the guilty and the guilt and the emotions surrounding her mom. And she read it in the book and shared it with us. Dee Dee wants to respond to that, but she also wants to really get out there and talk about her whole truth. And I told her that if she's not going to share the truth because she is a pathological liar, then I'm not having it. So this should be interesting, and I can't wait to share with you guys. All right, first things first, we're going to talk about things as she went along in the book. The first thing she actually mentions in a bigger way is the teeth and her salivary glands being removed. What kind of fucking psycho doctor did this? Gypsy asks in the book, why did this happen to me? I have no explanation as to why this particular surgery took place, and I'm going to answer that for her today. What I see took place with this doctor is that she obviously was under the guardianship of her mother, and her mother saw certain small cavities here and there. She basically told this dentist that she didn't need her teeth because she was fed through a feeding tube. Now, Gypsy was actually eating food. She was trying to eat food, I should say. And it was Dee Dee's way of controlling her so that she didn't use her teeth anymore. This dentist thought this poor mother is just trying to feed her child, really pushing that doctor to do it. And if I'm honest, this dentist wanted to do it too. He was on board with her 100%. Now, I think he's still alive somewhere. Maybe he's in a situation where he's not happy in life, but he knows what he did, and I think he's trying to hide. But one day, probably within the next couple of years, Gypsy's actually going to end up getting some assistance from maybe like a PI or something that's going to lead her directly to this guy. Not her specifically, but somebody within her family is going to out this guy. And it's going to be a big thing too. But we're going to find out he's done this for a few people as well. So she mentioned later on in the book, she wants to sue the medical practice. And I think she definitely should, because this guy has lots and lots of money. And I think it would be good to call him out because he shouldn't have done that to her. Mouth pain, like I know she's gotten her shit fixed now, but mouth pain isn't a joke. No, thank you. Now we got to go back in time when she was just a little kid, because this is when all this trauma happened. We see Gypsy as an adult now. We're forgetting that she was a child through most of this. Her mother muzzled her mouth for sleep apnea. Now, I know there's been advances when it comes to sleep apnea, but I know that that shit is not comfortable. And back, 20 years, it wasn't comfortable either. I couldn't imagine putting my child through more pain and suffering because I'm trying to keep her as sick as possible. It's just effed up. And this poor kid went through her whole life thinking she was going to die. She put Orajel on her gums to make her drool because she wanted the show. She wanted people to see Gypsy in need and be like, oh, poor Dee Dee. She does so much for this girl that's so much trouble. This was some serious dedication to screwing the system, I gotta tell ya. We'll get back to that though. Her father was only 17 years old when he met her mother, who was nearly 23. And she was pursuing him while he was working at a bowling alley. I mean, to me, that screams predator. I don't care. You are over the age of 20 years old and you are searching for a teenage boy. I don't care how good he looks. That is not okay. Give him at least a year to become an adult. I also believe that, her family, her father really sexually assaulted Dee Dee and did a lot of other things. And I think that there were other family members that also sexually assaulted Dee Dee as well. I think that's where this predator stuff comes from. But I'm also seeing that she was extremely triggered by anything sexual. So although she did get pregnant and have a baby and all that jazz, I think she only really wanted to get pregnant. And that was the only reason she had sex. I think that she is really an asexual person, just wanting that baby. When it comes to her and Rod's relationship, Gypsy mentions that Rod tried to stick it out with Dee Dee, but I gotta tell you, Dee Dee, and I don't think Rod wants to put this out there, a very unusual person. Now, really good with Gypsy, at least from his perspective, like a very dedicated mother, but everything else was lacking. She had a lot of problems. She lied a lot, and he saw those lies. Like, he physically could see her lies. She couldn't tell the truth, and she was just weird, and he didn't feel comfortable around her. So he got out of there, but he did try his absolute hardest, and he didn't want to leave his baby behind. And he knew that that would be the risk he would take. He knew that, okay, this woman, she may not let me see this kid anymore, and I feel fucking terrible about that, but I cannot suffer, and I know that she's at least taking care of the kid. He never even once thought differently. She, of course, had made up big time stories about how he was cheating on her with Christy and all this crazy shit that she said about the family. But in reality, none of that happened. And I truly believe that. Dee Dee definitely was not cheated on by Rod. I also think that she pulled out some really weird voodoo stuff in front of him and then would say things like, I'm going to kill you. Like, she was not an easy woman to deal with by any means. And honestly, any guy would probably run for the hills at that point. Gypsy asks the question, how did this happen? When did this happen? I don't know. I think the pivotal moment when this precisely started to take place was when Gypsy had her accident on the motorcycle. I see that she was at the hospital checking out Gypsy. People were fawning over her. And I even believe that Dee Dee already made up a couple of little white lies to the doctor and even people in the waiting room. And people were fawning over her. My goodness, you poor thing. I feel so bad for you. I think she lied about the cancer thing fairly early on. And Dee Dee loved the attention. She is one hell of an attention whore, especially when it makes her look like a sainted person. And that was the role she wanted to continue to keep fulfilling. Something awoke in Dee Dee. In her mind, it was like, my daughter is my meal ticket to charity and conning, unlimited medication, so many benefits. She decided that day forward that her child was going to be considered terminally ill, and she was going to find a disease whether she liked it or not. And I got to tell you, yes, it's a lot easier nowadays to search things up, Google things, do that, this and the other, but it wasn't as easy back then. So she put a lot of dedication into searching up all of these different types of diseases and side effects just so that she can make Gypsy look like she had those things. I even believe that there were moments where she would hurt Gypsy, like so that she had a reaction, or like would purposely give her something to give her a reaction. Like she really tried her absolute hardest to make it seem like this kid was not okay. The funny thing is Gypsy was not allergic to anything that this woman is trying to make her allergic to. She even got to a point where she was watching her daughter's stool and the colors of it and determining, oh, my child is allergic to this, that, and the other. And I think that's even where the sugar thing came, because she had a different colored poop and she was like, nope, my kid's allergic to this. Now, was there any accountability when she was alive or after the fact? I believe there's a lot now. When she was alive, no remorse in any capacity, no guilt. She thought that in her mind, she convinced herself that she's doing what was right for her and her daughter. And I mean, Gypsy said to us in the book too that Dee Dee was stealing her godmother's money. I know that they got kicked out of the house for something along those lines, but I think something even bigger happened as well. And I feel like she had a whole con going. It wasn't just money being removed, it was something else too. There was a lot of things that Dee Dee did before Gypsy even came into the picture that was extremely shady. Gypsy also mentioned that her mom stole a wheelchair. And I think there were a few stolen wheelchairs. One was given for free, but she would go to the doctors just to steal supplies like gloves or masks or, any medication that's in that little desk. She would go and rummage through the doctor's shit and take whatever she could. She saw supply closets open. She was taking things. Like, this woman did not stop. She also would do that whole scam where she would go to one doctor, get prescription for this, go to another doctor, get the same prescription. She was doubling up on drugs and also addicted to Oxy like her daughter. And then she also changed the last name of her daughter as well at these different doctors so that no one put two and two together. Obviously, you can't pull that shit now, but back in the day, you could definitely do. Daddy Claude. As soon as Gypsy said those words, it sent the most repulsive, creepiest ever. I am so creeped out. I only said that name one time in this video. I'm referring to him as her grandfather, or Claude, because I can't say that again. From the moment she mentioned him, I instantly just got so sick. So there are levels of, being predators. And I would say that he is very high ranking of the most disturbing, disgusting humans you could ever imagine. I think he's the reason that Dee Dee ended up the way she did. I know that there were other people that hurt her in her family, but I think he was what really pushed her over the edge to be the way she is. I'm also angry because I believe that Dee Dee was incredibly afraid that this man was going to hurt her daughter, but allowed her in his presence, alone. And from what I see, Gypsy mentioned that her mother and Cloud made a little bath time together, and Gypsy was present for that as well. And Gypsy told her mother about what happened with this gross man, and Dee Dee had an emotional breakdown. And Gypsy even said that this conversation was probably the most realist conversation she ever had with her mother. But Dee Dee should have taken that kid out of there. Gypsy shouldn't have dealt with that, period. I do have to say, I gotta give credit where credit is due. Gypsy fully called him out. Yeah, he had said on a documentary on Lifetime that she had touched him and that he didn't touch her. No, dude. When I watched that documentary, obviously we knew you were lying too, but I'm glad she called him out in the book. She wouldn't even have known what the fuck that was. You had to have done something. Even if the child grabs at you, you tell her no. You don't be like, yeah, just keep going. Now, I do want to talk about this predator because I think it's important, but I believe that many children that have been in his presence have been molested by him. So if anyone's watching, I would definitely check with your children, your adult children. He's been doing it a while. I'm even sad to say that I think there's another child currently involved in his life somewhere. Not often, but often enough that he's hurting her. And Dee Dee was definitely her dad's favorite. Why? Because she just let him do it. He would give her favors and she would be okay with that. Now, when I talked to Dee Dee about this is tough because she's not interested in talking about it, but I'm going to try to see if I can convince her. Just a little bit. Gypsy mentioned in the book that a lot of people ask why she didn't tell DFS when they came that one time. Let's talk about this, shall we? This is probably the closest they ever got to discovering what the hell Dee Dee was doing. When they filed the report, they just go out to see Gypsy. Nothing in that home is going to say anything differently other than she's being medically taken care of, right? Kids lie. Gypsy has been told her entire life that you do not trust anyone but me. And to be honest, it's not really the child's responsibility to do your job for you. If you're a good caseworker and you take the time to kind of read between the lines, see something seems off, then you continue to keep investigating. I would have done a lot of research. I would have looked at exactly what this doctor had said, and then I would start questioning everything medically. Everything. Oh, you say she has cancer? Well, let's go and just check and see the progress of this cancer. Oh, you said she has this, that, and the other. Let's check into this. But I really believe that this caseworker, like a lot of caseworkers, had a load of things on their plate, wasn't really paying attention, saw an environment where the child was being fed and the child was being taken care of, and their relationship had not escalated at this point. Although Gypsy was unhappy in her environment, she was still not interested or trying to leave at this point. Like she had said in the book, her mother did not physically abuse her at this point, not with marks on her body. Medically, yes, but that one visit and never came back again. I believe that if this worker had spent a little bit more time than just one visit, I really believe that she would have found a lot more and would have done what she needed to do to make damn sure that that kid got out of there. Dee Dee was so invested in conning people that she even conned her daughter. You need to know how to steal things because we got to do this, that, and the other. She didn't even really give her daughter a reason as to why she needed her to steal, but she just did it. From what I see, Dee Dee was like one hell of a kleptomaniac. And anytime she got away with anything, sticking it to the man, sticking it to the business, she got a thrill out of it. And if she got caught, because I think there were moments where they got caught, I feel like she just blamed it on Gypsy. Oh, she's disabled. We can't trust her to do anything. I should have checked. I'm sorry. She really used her white woman privilege card to the top notch, I'll tell you. Now, Dee Dee also, back in the day, had a connection to pageantry. I think she was entered into one pageant, and I believe it was like not even a real pageant. She had lost lots of weight and then had been crowned, and then she was like so expecting to get famous and be a famous groupie. She wanted to be a groupie for her whole life, get famous that way. Unfortunately, these rock stars that she was following along had zero interest in her. Now, there were people starting to want to see Gypsy, like her dad and her family members, but she kept hiding Gypsy away because she knew that if people put two and two together, this would allow people to see that she is not okay, and Gypsy start communicating and then starting to tell the truth. She was worried about that. So the more they push, the more she will pull Gypsy away from anyone. Even the neighbors, talking to her neighbors, she really had a hard time. She kept things very surface level, but would engage so that people didn't hate on her. But they never spent much time out of their house. Now, her life, it was unique because we all went to school. Well, most of us. Yes, there are some people that don't go to school, but majority of people have that experience of going to school, going to kindergarten, going to high school, doing all of that. She got none of that. She wasn't taught anything. She wasn't educated. She really, literally had no lifeline of any sort of any kind other than her mother. She really had no idea how to associate or communicate with people until she got to prison. And I mean, although, not everyone in prison is an evil person, but it's not a good environment for people to be communicating. Now, Dee Dee and witchcraft. Gypsy talks a lot about Dee Dee and witchcraft in this. And little Gypsy was really scared of the witchcraft stuff. And adult Gypsy was kind of like, okay, great. Like she was still, believing it, but still a little bit more suspicious. God. Okay, how about this? Yes, Gypsy definitely witnessed all of that. And I would be scared too, because it resembles all those Disney movies she's watching. Snow White's evil stepmother, that kind of shit. Anyway, Dee Dee would carry on and talk about how her and her mother were really, really good at it. She really wasn't. And although she was doing this spell and that spell, she wasn't doing it right. If anything, she did it more so to scare Gypsy than anything else. Punishments that would mentally fuck up your mind. Kids are gullible, and she relied on that. She really liked putting the fear of God in her child forever going against her, which makes sense as to why, Gypsy's not necessarily on the verge of booking a session, but I can understand why she stays away from this stuff. I would stay away from it too if I was traumatized with it as a child. No, thank you. And I mean, if you thought this your whole life, I'd be scared of everything that goes bump in the night. Even when I look at pictures of the inside of the house, I get this disturbing, creepy thought. We'll talk about the house later on though. Gypsy talks about a drug addiction. It is tough beating an addiction. I believe that Dee Dee was really the encouraging factor to push Gypsy to have this drug addiction. She did it herself, and in her mind, well, my kid needs medication. I'm going to take medication. So she was like, yeah, if you just think it makes you feel better, why not? Go for it. Gypsy would put it in her feeding tube and woof, would feel it instantly. And that story she told, Gypsy told a story in relation to her mother running out of oxys and then going to the police station with Gypsy in tow and telling them that somebody stole her medication and she needed it desperately. That is what an addict will do. And then Gypsy also mentions it was easier for her to communicate with guys because of her addiction, and I believe her. I believe her wholeheartedly. She didn't realize how much of the drugs she was taking either, because she didn't know any better. But I would agree. She was taking those drugs to give her that edge. She didn't have any alcohol. So what she could rely on was drugs. I even feel like she spent a lot of time searching up what was sexy online and trying to portray that to men, which did attract some seriously bad attention. Now, Dan, the drunk guy that ended up running into her wheelchair at a convention, had added her to her secret MySpace and her secret Facebook account. I believe many people that went to the convention added her. I know that Dee Dee went and picked up her kid and brought her home and yada, yada, yada. But I actually think that the abuse was not good. Her doing what she did to Gypsy in her home was definitely not okay. Treating her like a dog, putting her on a leash, like that was effed up. But I can honestly say that Dee Dee prevented Gypsy. I think she would have gone down a harder drug way. I see that if she stuck it out with Dan, it would not have been a good idea. But then again, how would Gypsy have known a good character to a bad character? She had no idea. At that point, Dee Dee made damn sure to tell Gypsy that she was never leaving her side. Now, let's talk about Nick. Nick is an extremely delusional, disturbed young man. I believe that he came from a home of abuse as well, physically, emotionally, even sexually. And what Gypsy Rose says in her book is pretty accurate when it comes to him specifically. He was mentally unwell long before she came into the picture. But because Gypsy was so consumed with her life, she didn't really pay attention to a lot of the details. It was almost like she had to do what she had to do to get what she needed. And from what I see, she just pretended his dark behavior was okay. Her mother told her that men were evil, and she just thought that this came along with it. She didn't really have any relationships with men, so she didn't have any reference to say, oh yeah, this is totally not normal. Now, the BDSM stuff, so there's two things with that. He talks a lot about an ex-girlfriend and what he wants to do to her, and it is not okay. And I think there was another woman, though. Gypsy doesn't talk about it because I don't think Gypsy knows, but I think that there was a female teacher predator in Nick's life when he was very young. And I think that's where things happened with him. And then I think his dad was really, really hard on him too. I think his dad did a lot of things to hurt him too. His mom pretended things weren't going on, I would say, but their relationship got better as he got older. Now, what happened with Nick, and then him and his ex-girlfriend, which I think she got away because she saw the red flags very quickly. And like in his mind, in Nick's mind, he wanted to hurt her. Nick has no problems saying who he wants to hurt. And I believe that if he had been taken out of jail, he would have gone straight for the hills, searching for Gypsy, tried to kill her and anyone associated with her. It's not necessarily bad that he's still behind bars, because I really believe that he still thinks he's getting out. He thinks he's got a shot in hell and that he's going to get his revenge. He even wants to kill her baby. He hears all this stuff about her in the media, and that's the other reason it's kind of scary for her to be. I think that's the biggest reason. Like, the hate is a lot. I'm not going to lie. The amount of people hating on her is crazy, crazy ridiculous. But I think this is for safety reasons for her, her child, and her family. Even though I don't believe Nick's going to get out, you never know. Nick could have an obsessive fan, you know what I mean? Do something crazy. So yeah, he needs to stay there. I mean, he clearly doesn't know what boundaries are. He was caught touching himself in a McDonald's. And she talks about that in the book as well. She didn't find out about that until later. He got in trouble for that with the law as well. In his mind, he's in like a movie or a video game. He thinks that he can cross boundaries, that he doesn't have any boundaries. I think that they should definitely try to help rehabilitate him, but I don't know. It's like the darkness behind his eyes. I don't know if he'll actually be able to be rehabilitated at all. I believe that there's going to be an attempted jailbreak. Speaking of jailbreak, Gypsy also talks about her time with somebody making an assumption that she was going to be doing a jailbreak. It was crazy. We'll talk about it in part 2. But I see that Nick may attempt this at some point. When he gets to a point where it is desperate. He won't be successful. Nothing like that will happen. Now let's talk about these alternative personalities of his. It should not surprise anybody that he suffers from DID, which is an abbreviation for dissociative identity disorder. In other words, there's multiple personalities within you. You're a unit. You house many different people. And some can be young children and some can be much older. And these personalities come to life. I have a friend who actually has DID, and she lives a very, very normal life. But when somebody is this fucked up, there's no controlling those alter egos. Victor, that is probably the darkest part of Nick. He has to call himself a 3,000-year-old vampire because he wants that sort of like, authority in the world, that he can do whatever he wants whenever he wants. And the necrophiliac, he pushes it into the Victor altar, but really that necrophiliac altar is every one of them. I think that there's like at least 10 to 12 different altars, and from what I see, it's pretty bad. They're all pretty dark. There's even a little young baby Nick in there too. He was even trying to suggest that Gypsy also had a DID, which she does not. He put out there so often that he would kill, kill, kill. And I don't think Gypsy had said this in the book. She did feel bad for getting Nick involved in this. Like, she does. And I think she even went to his trial and tried to stand up for him as well. She feels terrible for pulling him into this, but he would have been behind bars one way or another, hurting somebody else. He is still incredibly darkly obsessed with her, and I'm even thinking he might even be trying to reach out to Ryan. There's something in the background of brewing with this guy. He's not gonna stop by any means anytime soon. But anyways, guys, I have so much more to say when it comes to Gypsy Rose. Like, we're not even kind of close, but I have to stop it here, and we will be back for part 2 here soon. Not sure which one's dropping first, either Sister Wives part 2 or Gypsy Rose part 2. We'll see, but expect to see it here soon. Until next time, keep your energy high, your questions open, and as always, stay freaked out.